This course is an overview to the field of culinary arts. It is designed to provide a snapshot of the fundamentals of culinary profession, as well as the theories of ingredients and preparations of foods. It focuses on knowledge and skills a chef needs to operate and manage a food service operation and prepare a variety of foods. The course will also explore management areas such as food safety and sanitation, types of menus, recipe conversions, inventory, and cost control. Here is just a note on the assessment for this course. The assessment is based solely on the final examination. Examination questions will be drawn randomly from a large test bank. However, the system is designed so that the questions that appear on each individual's test will cover all 17 relevant topics to at least some degree. Students will have 3 hours to complete the final exam. All final examinations must be proctored either in person or through an approved online proctoring system. Students should contact CCC for information regarding options in taking the exam. After studying this lesson, you will be able to discuss the development of the modern food service industry, recognize the key historical figures responsible for developing food service professionalism, explain the organization of the classic and modern kitchen brigades, appreciate the role of the professional chef in modern food service operations, and identify the attributes a student chef needs to become a professional. The brigade. The brigade is a system of staffing a kitchen so that each worker is assigned a set of specific tasks. The modern brigade is almost always led by an executive chef, who is the person who coordinates kitchen activities and directs the staff's trainings and work efforts. This is a person who plans, creates recipes, and oversees all aspects of the operation. It is not uncommon to see the executive chef involved and engaged in the actual preparation of foods, at least in overseeing it and supervising it. It would not be uncommon to find a person like this to be doing things like contacting vendors, ordering foods, paying the bills in the restaurant, and making sure that agencies to come in to observe and license the cleanliness of the facility would also be contacted by the executive chef and dealt with accordingly. Each member in the brigade has a dedicated task. The sous chef is someone who works directly below the executive chef, and this is a person whose primary responsibility is to make sure that food is prepared, portioned, garnished, and presented according to the executive chef's and the institution's standards. This is a person who will oversee most of the folks below, such as the area chefs, each responsible for a specific facility or function, the line cooks, who are responsible for preparing menu items according to recipe specifications. Then we have folks like the pastry chef, prep cooks, assistants, and apprentices. All these folks form a chain of command with specific tasks that make up the brigade. We've been speaking primarily about the back of the house management, leading from the executive chef and through the other folks who work in the kitchen per se. But it would be remiss to not speak of the front of the house management, the maitre d', and folks like that. But that gentleman in particular, or woman, is entirely responsible for all front of the house operations, manages a wait staff who gives help to customers, allocate the duties of opening and closing the restaurant often. It's easy to just think of it as what goes on behind the scenes in the kitchen. And then when you're speaking of the front of the house management, we're talking about the folks who are absolutely in the front where the customers are, where customer service takes place, where food is served, where actual eating takes place. As early as the 1500s, culinary guilds were developed to dictate and monopolize the preparation of certain food items. Each guild governed the production of a set of types of food. In looking at this list here in slide number 9, we can see we have guilds such as the rôtisseurs, and their product was main cuts of meat, the pâtisseries, cakes, pies, and tarts, the tamisseurs, breads, the vinaigriers, sauces and stews, the traiteurs, ragouts, and the porte-chapes were the caterers of the time. The first restaurant proprietor is believed to have been one Boulanger, a soup vendor who opened his business in Paris in 1765. The sign above his door advertised restoratives, or restaurants, referring to the soups, broths available within. The institution took its name from that sign, and restaurant now denotes a public eating place in English, French, and Dutch. Let us now turn our attention to the haute cuisine, the early 19th century, and Mr. Antonin Carême, the king of cooks and the cook of kings. His stated goal was to achieve lightness, grace, order, and perspicuity in the preparation and presentation of food. As a saucier, he standardized the use of roux and devised a system to classify sauces. As a garde manager, he popularized cold cuisine. As a culinary professional, he designed kitchen tools, equipment, and uniforms. As an author, he wrote and illustrated important texts on the culinary arts, describing the hundreds of dishes he personally created and cooked in the capitals of Europe. But his books were not mere cookbooks. He also analyzed cooking old and new, emphasizing procedure and order and covering every aspect of the art, known as the grand cuisine. It's interesting to note that this gentleman died before the age of 50, and as your book points out, he was burnt out by the flame of his genius and the coal of the spits. When considering the cuisine classique of the late 19th century, we will take a look at Auguste Escoffier. He's the emperor of the world's kitchens. He defined French cuisine and dining during La Belle Époque, simplified food preparation and dining. He classified the 5 families of sauces. He wrote extensively, and among his writings are included Les Livres des Menus, a guide to planning meals, Mot Cuisine, a survey of cuisine bourgeoisie, middle-class cuisine, and Le Guide Culinaire, still in use today, a collection of classical cuisine recipes and garnishes, which includes more than 5,000 classic cuisine recipes. Any discussion of 20th century cuisine begins with Ferdinand Point. He refined and modernized classical cuisine and laid the groundwork for the nouvelle cuisine. Point's ideas were taken even farther beyond his simplicity and his refinement and carried to greater heights by Paul Boccace, Jean and Pierre Trogrosse, Alain Chapelle, François Bizet, and Louis Altier. They, along with Michael Gerard and Roger Verger, were the pioneers of the nouvelle cuisine in the early 1970s. At the same time, Gaston Lenotre modernized the classic pastries of grande cuisine, infusing them with the bright, fresh flavors of the nouvelle cuisine. Gaston Lenotre is considered the father of modern pastry. He began a culinary school, L'École Lenotre, and developed innovations in Bavarians, charlottes, mousses, and master techniques of freezing baked products. In America, we too had a culinary revolution. The 2 folks who are most identified with that are Charles Fraunhofer and Alice Waters. Charles Fraunhofer, he's the first internationally renovated chef of an American restaurant called Delmonico's in New York City, and he published The Epicurean, which contains over 3,500 recipes. Alice Waters launched the new American cuisine. Her goal was to serve fresh, seasonal, and locally grown produce in simple preparations that preserved and emphasized the food's natural flavors. Fusion cuisine. American cuisine has always been influenced by cuisines from other countries. This is most evident in the fusion cuisine which began in the mid-1980s. In fusion cuisine, ingredients or preparation methods associated with one ethnic or regional cuisine are combined with those of another. For instance, suddenly it became more common to find items as diverse as Norwegian salmon and Japanese soba noodles to be on the same plate. Advances in technology have had incredible influence on the modern food service operations. When we're talking about new technologies such as cast iron stove has drastically changed the way things have been cooked. In the area of food storage, Francois Alpert and his invention of canned foods, you can only imagine the way that would impact the way foods could be handled and could be preserved. In the area of transportation, in the 1870s, the appearance of temperature-controlled boxcars greatly influenced the way food could now be transported. Food that had been that is frozen could be transported, could be received at the other end of the country, and then could be thawed out and served. New foods with hybridization, and particularly the hotbed topic of genetic engineering, have been appearing in the early part of this millennium in the year 2000s. This was quite an issue, whether or not food should be labeled, GMO food should be labeled. This still continues to be an extremely controversial topic. People are discussing the health issues associated with it, the public safety issues that are related around it, and I think the conversations in this area will continue to take place. And of course, given the fact that we now are all engaged in a global community, which impacts us in so many areas of our life, this will continue to affect the food service operations in many ways. We spoke of this earlier in an earlier slide, but just to review some of the folks you will run into in the modern kitchen. We have the master chef, the executive chef, the sous chef, line cook, pastry chef, a short order cook, institutional cook, and of course, many of you will end up as an apprentice in such an institution. And of course, we should always remember about the front of the house operation, your maitre d', and your waitstaff. So what does it take to be a professional chef? Well, of course, there's knowledge, lifelong learning, to be able to identify, order, and prepare a wide range of foods. I mean, think about it. A professional chef has to have a vision of what things should be in a menu and how food should taste. And then to take that vision and manifest it into the kitchen and into the plates of the consumers, it takes a long time and a lot of clarity and a lot of discipline. It also takes a lot of skill. Of course, there's culinary education, but that alone will not be enough. It takes years of hands-on experience. It takes taste, and I know it's obvious but true, but food must taste good. If food doesn't taste good, consumers will not come to the restaurant. And lastly, there's the elements of judgment. What should I use? What decisions should I make in regarding what should be on the menu, which vendors I should buy from, when should I order, when should I not order, when should I cut back, when should I stock up. These types of decisions require a lot of judgment and a lot of discipline, dedication, and of course, lastly, pride. After studying this unit, you will be able to identify the causes of food-borne illness, knowledge of how to handle foods in a safe manner, explain and follow an HACCP system, and finally, to describe how to maintain a safe and sanitary working environment. Food safety and sanitation. The U.S. Public Health Service identifies more than 40 diseases that could be transmitted through food. Many can cause serious illness, some are even deadly. Providing consumers with safe food is the food handler's most important responsibility. Unfortunately, food handlers are also the primary cause of food-related illnesses. Sanitation. Sanitation is the creation and maintenance of conditions that will prevent food contamination or food-borne illness. When consumed in sufficient quantities, food-borne contaminants can cause serious injury and even death. Contamination can occur in three basic ways: biological, chemical, and/or physical contamination. Biological contamination is caused by disease-causing microorganisms such as bacteria, molds, yeasts, funguses, or fungi. Chemical contamination can be caused by chemical substances, especially cleaning agents, pesticides, and toxic metals that may be near the food. Physical contamination is caused by particles such as glass chips, metal shavings, bits of wood, or other foreign matter. So it's exceedingly important to keep our areas clean where we are working. A lot of these explanations and things that we're discussing may seem rather obvious, but we really cannot minimize the importance of these things when working with our food. So think about this. Contamination can occur in two basic ways. There's direct or cross-contamination. In direct contamination, the contamination of raw foods in their natural setting or habitat occurs. Cross-contamination is the transfer of bacteria or other contaminants from one food, work surface, or piece of equipment to another. We will now be looking at biological contaminants, microorganisms which are single-celled organisms, as well as tiny plants and animals that can be seen only through a microscope. Bacteria. Bacteria are single-celled microorganisms, and they are the leading cause of food-borne illness. Putrefactive. These are bacteria that spoil food without rendering it unfit for human consumption. Pathogenic bacteria is any organism that causes disease. Usually refers to bacteria, and it's undetected by smell, sight, or taste. Pathogenic is responsible for as many as 95% of all food-borne illness. There are three ways that bacterial illness can occur. There's intoxication. When certain bacteria produce toxins, the toxins can then poison the consumer. Then there is infection. This occurs when live pathogenic bacteria are ingested. Then there's toxin-mediated infection. Living organisms are ingested, then they produce toxins. Foods that are potentially hazardous are foods from animal sources, foods from a plant that has been heat treated, raw seed sprouts, cut melons, garlic and oil mixtures non-acidic, and foods containing any of the items above. Here we have an area, again, that might seem obvious, but is no less important. The controls in the fight against bacteria, of course, include temperature. Keeping the temperature where it should be. Foods that need to be refrigerated need to be refrigerated. Items should not be left out over a period of time. The humidity level in the kitchen and other storage areas needs to be considered to keep the moisture to a safe level, as well as acid and alkali balance, extremely important, and the overall atmosphere where food is kept, prepared, and served. As alluded to in the last slide, the most important factor in the pathogenic bacteria's environment is time. Remember, this is the factor that is easily controlled by food service workers. Let's talk more specifically about time. When bacteria move from one place to another, they require time to adjust to the new conditions. This resting period, during which very little growth occurs, is called the lag phase and may last from 1 to 4 hours. It is followed by the log phase, a period of accelerated growth, and then by the stationary phase, which lasts until the bacteria begin to crowd others within their colony, creating competition for food, space, and moisture. This begins the decline. or negative growth phase during which bacteria die at an accelerated rate. Let's speak a little bit about moisture. Bacteria need moisture to live. However, bacteria growth is halted but not killed in dehydrated foods. Thus, when dehydrated foods are rehydrated, the present bacteria can flourish and the food may become then potentially hazardous. This is something you definitely want to keep in mind. Another thing to consider when preparing foods for your patrons is the acid-alkali balance, or the pH. Bacteria are affected by the pH of their environment, as are many things. They can survive in a wide range of pH levels. However, what you really want to think about, they prefer a neutral environment with a pH of 6.6 to 7.5. Their growth is halted in a pH of 4.6 or less. Let's look at a little bit about atmosphere. Some bacteria thrive on oxygen, which is an aerobic atmosphere. Some cannot survive in the presence of oxygen, thus they survive in an anaerobic atmosphere. Unfortunately, most bacteria thrive in a facultative atmosphere. They can adapt and can survive with or without oxygen. Let's talk about the very touchy subject of parasites. Parasites are tiny organisms that depend on nutrients from a living host to complete their life cycle. There are three types. There's trichinosis, caused by eating undercooked meat. There's anisakiasis, caused by parasitic roundworms. And roundworms are very common in many animals. Puppies, for instance, usually are born with them. They get them from their mother. And then there is the cyclospora, which are parasites found in water contaminated by feces. Let's talk about viruses. These are living organisms that invade the living cells of a host, a person, take over those cells' genetic material, and then cause those cells to produce even more viruses. Thus it grows. Some examples. Hepatitis enters the food supply through shellfish. The neurovirus is spread by poor personal hygiene. In other words, a food handler may be infected with a virus, touches the food, and it spreads that way. Or through fungi, which is usually found in food supply in the form of mold or yeast. Fungi. These are plants ranging from single-celled organisms to giant mushrooms. They are the largest group. They consist most everywhere in soil, water, and in the air. Now molds are algae-like fungi that form long filaments or strands. These filaments often extend into the air, appearing as cottony or velvety masses, and they're on food. We've seen these. Large colonies of mold are easily visible to the naked eye. So these are things we want to be aware of. Yeast require water and carbohydrates, mostly sugar and starch, for survival. As the organisms consume carbohydrates, they expel alcohol or carbon dioxide gas through a process known as fermentation. And we all know what that is as well. These are things we need to be aware of. Again, we need to just exercise common sense. Keep our food free of contaminants. There are residual contaminants, the kind of things that are used in growing the food supply. So these are they're going to come right along with it. So food needs to be absolutely cleaned and washed. There's food service chemicals, cleaners, polishes, pesticides, and abrasives. Keep your food away from these things. And toxic metals such as lead, mercury, copper, zinc, and antimony. Something we've spoken of earlier is cross-contamination. Here we can call it the transfer of bacteria or contaminants from one food, work surface, or piece of equipment to another. Let's talk again about reducing cross-contamination. This is done mostly through personal cleanliness. Let's talk about that. You want to wash your hands frequently and thoroughly. You want to keep your nails short. Any cuts or wounds, you want to have them antiseptically bandaged. Please bathe daily. Keep your hair clean and restrained, or covered if necessary. Wear work clothes that are clean and neat. Do not eat, drink, or smoke or chew gum in the food preparation area. Remember, we want our dish and equipment cleanliness to be sanitary. And sanitary, again, to define it, means that harmful substances are reduced to safe levels. And finally, we want to manage pests in our environment. We want to make sure that there's no food around when we are spraying insecticides. 3-compartment sink procedure. First, you want to scrape and spray the item to remove soil. Wash the item in the first sink compartment using 110 Fahrenheit water and an approved detergent. A brush or cloth may be used to remove any remaining soil. Then you want to rinse or spray the item in a second sink compartment using 110 Fahrenheit water again. Then you want to sanitize the item in a third sink by either immersing it in 171 water for at least 30 seconds or immersing it in an approved chemical sanitizing solution. Of course, you want to empty, clean, and refill each sink compartment as necessary. FIFO is an acronym for first in, first out. And this simply refers to stocking our items. Thus, when we have items we receive from vendors, we need to make sure that we are always using first the item that came first. Often this means moving things from the back of the refrigerator to the front as new items come. So always be aware that you're using stock that is the oldest in your refrigerator or on your shelves. HACCP, which is an acronym, HACCP, which covers hazard analysis, critical control points, is an effective, efficient system for managing and maintaining sanitary conditions in all types of food service operations. It is really a self-policing process. It focuses on the flow of food through the food service facility from the decision to include an item on the menu through service to the consumer. A critical control point in that flow is any step during the processes of food when a mistake can result in the transmission, growth, or survival of pathogenic bacteria. The flow of the system is thus. You first identify potential hazards and evaluate their severity and risk. Then identify the critical control points, which are steps where hazards can reduce or be eliminated. Establish procedures for controlling hazards and correcting problems. Monitor the critical control points and correct problems as they arise. Set up and use a record-keeping system, very important, and verify that the system is working and adjust it as needed. Let's talk a little bit about the safe worker. First, we'll talk about personal safety. Occupational Safety and Health Act, OSHA, is always going to be used as a touchstone. Clean up spills as they occur. Learn to operate your equipment properly. Wear clothing that fits properly. Use knives or other equipment for their intended purposes only. Be careful. Keep exits and aisles and stairs clean and unobstructed. Always assume pots and pans are hot. Handle them carefully. Get help or use a cart when lifting or moving heavy objects. Keep breakable items away from food storage or production areas. Never leave a pan of oil unattended. Hot fat can ignite when overheated, and we'll talk about fire safety in a moment. Warn people when you must walk behind them, especially when carrying a pot of hot water or any other hot pan. Let's talk a little bit about fires. We absolutely have to keep our ventilators clean. Flare-ups can occur that can actually grow into major fires. We need to know how to use fire extinguishers and where they are. And finally, remember about first aid. Training in CPR, the Heimlich maneuver, and like procedures can absolutely save lives in the food service workplace. After studying this unit, you will be able to describe the different types and styles of menus, identify the importance of the purpose of standardized recipes, convert recipe yield amounts, and apply the need for cost controls in any food service operation. How many times have you yourselves stood outside of a restaurant and looked at the menu that was posted to the window? Are the prices too expensive? Is this the kind of food we want to eat? Questions such as, what are we getting ourselves into in this restaurant? Actually are the kinds of questions that are answered by the menu. It is a very, very important document. So what is a menu and why do we need a menu? Well, to define it, it's just a list of food and beverages available for purchase. Of course, the prices and the ingredients, some ingredients of those dishes are also included. And maybe whether or not it's sautéed or it's fried. In other words, the way things are prepared also could be found in the menu. It is the soul of every food service operation and sales too. Let's talk about types of menus. The first type of menu is a static menu. Here, all patrons are offered the same foods every day. McDonald's, sound familiar? Sure, if you eat there. And if you don't, maybe it's the static menu or what's on it. A cycle menu is developed for a set period. A market menu is exactly what it says. It's based upon the availability of product in the marketplace. Finally, there's the hybrid menu, which is exactly what it says it is. It combines various components of either static, cycle, and/or market menus. Let's briefly look at menu styles. We have the a la carte. Every food and beverage item is priced and ordered separately. The semi-a la carte, a very popular menu style. Some food items, particularly appetizers and desserts, are priced and ordered separately, while the entree, the main course, is accompanied by and priced to include other items, such as a salad, starch, or vegetable. I think we've seen this very often when we go out to eat. And then we have the table d'hôte or prix fixé. This menu offers a complete meal at a set price. We would be remiss if we didn't mention the truth in advertising. Federal as well as many state laws require that certain menu language be accurate, both in terms of quality, quantity, as well as grade and freshness. Nutritional statements need to be included. New York is very stringent in this area. And remember that the truth in advertising policy is carefully regulated by the FDA. Here's a brief definition of recipe. What is a recipe? It's a set of written instructions for producing a specific food or baked good. It will usually contain the volume of particular ingredients as well as what condition they may be in, albeit diced or strained, something of that order. Standardized recipes should be created for each and every item that's produced. We'll produce a known quantity and quality for food for a specific operation. Standardized recipes always include the type and amount of each ingredient, the preparation and cooking procedure, and the yield and portion size. Measurement formats. Weight refers to the mass or heaviness of a substance. It's expressed in terms such as grams, ounces, pounds, and tons. Of course, these terms depend on whether it's a metric or a U.S. system being discussed, and we'll cover that in a little while. Second, we have volume, which refers to the space occupied by a substance. This is mathematically expressed as height times weight times length. It is generally expressed in terms such as cups, gallons, teaspoons, fluid ounces, bushels, and liters, again, dependent upon whether it's metric or the U.S. system. Finally, there's count, commonly used in purchasing to indicate the size of an individual item. As referenced earlier, there are different measurement systems. Here in the U.S., we use our own system. There was a movement in the 1970s to move the United States toward a metric system with advertising campaigns such as Think Metric. That was a complete failure because Americans were really hell-bent on maintaining their own systems. And of course, that is exactly what happened. So the U.S. system is only used here in the States. It uses pounds for weight and cups for volume. Now the metric system is used throughout most of the world. It's a decimal system in which grams, liters, and meters are the basic units of weight, volume, and length, respectively. Let's take a look at some of these measurements and ways of converting. 1 ounce equals 28.35 grams. A fluid ounce equals 28.35 milliliters. 1 kilogram is about 2.2 pounds. 1 gram is 1/30th of an ounce. 1 pound is roughly 450 grams. A liter is slightly more than a quart. A centimeter is slightly less than half an inch. 0 degrees centigrade, 32 degrees Fahrenheit is the freezing point of water. I think many of us know that one. I do. 100 degrees centigrade equals 212 degrees Fahrenheit, which is the boiling point of water. Converting total yield. Step 1. Divide the desired new yield by the recipe old yield to obtain the conversion factor, CF. New yield divided by old yield equals conversion factor. Step 2. Multiply each of the ingredient quantities by the conversion factor to obtain the new quantity. Old quantity times conversion factor equals new quantity. Converting your portion size. Step 1. Determine the total yield of the existing recipe by multiplying the number of portions by the portion size original portions X, original portion size, equals total yield. Step 2. Determine the total yield desired by multiplying the new number of portions by the new portion size, desired portions X, desired portion size, equals total new yield. Continuing converting portion size. Step 3. Obtain the conversion factor as described earlier. New total yield divided by total yield equals conversion factor. Step 4. Multiply each ingredient quantity by the conversion factor. Old quantity times conversion factor equals new yield. Additional conversion problems. In all recipe conversions, there are factors that must be considered. There is the equipment and how that interacts with the food we are serving and we are creating. There is evaporation of ingredients that might change quantities. There are errors in the recipe, of course. Yes, it does happen. And of course, there is time. Do not multiply time specifications given in a recipe by the conversion factor used with the recipe's ingredients. Remember, all things being equal, cooking time will not change when recipe size changes. In order to allocate the proper ingredient costs to the recipes being prepared, it is necessary to convert as purchased AP costs or prices to unit costs or prices. The way we do this is AP cost divided by the number of units equals the cost per unit. A standardized recipe listing the ingredients and their amounts, as well as the number and size of the portions, must be established in order to determine the cost of a completed menu item. And the way we do this is thus. Step 1. Determine the cost for the given quantity of each recipe ingredient with the unit costing procedures described earlier. Step 2. Add all the ingredient costs together to obtain the total recipe cost. Here's your formula. Total recipe cost divided by the number of portions equals cost per portion. So here we have an example of recipe costs. You have a recipe for baking cake layers. The recipe yields 5 10-inch cake layers. The total recipe cost divided by the number of portions equals the cost per portion. Thus, $15 divided by 5 equals $3 per cake layer. That's a simple example. Nonetheless, it is accurate. Now let's define edible portion, EP. The amount of food item available for consumption or use after trimming or fabrication. A smaller, more convenient portion of a larger or bulk unit. An example could be a piece of chicken or beef. Keep this in mind because it can affect your food costs. There are other items in establishing your selling prices. Plate cost is the cost of the food that is served. Your overhead cost, the associated costs incurred in order to run the business. You need to pay people, correct? Food cost percentage, the amount needed to add to the price in order to achieve a profit. Though we love what we do need to make a living. Let's take a look at using the food cost percentage. Step 1. Determine the total cost of all components in a finished plate. Step 2. Divide the total plate cost by the desired food cost percentage. And here's our formula. Plate cost divided by food cost percentage equals the selling price. So let's take an example of using the food cost percentage. You have an entree dish that has a plate cost of $7.50, and you need to make a 50% food cost to show a profit. Plate cost divided by food cost percentage equals selling price. Thus, $7.50 divided by 50% equals $15. Selling price of that dish. Let's take a quick look at a list of items which help controlling food costs. Here's what you have to factor: your menu, purchasing, receiving, the cost of storing, issuing, your kitchen procedures, establishing the standard portions, waste, and of course, sales and service. Lesson 4. Tools and equipment. After studying this unit, you will be able to recognize a variety of professional kitchen tools and equipment, describe the various types and why best to care for knives, understand how a professional kitchen is organized. The NSF International is an organization. It promulgates consensus standards for design, construction, and installation of kitchen tools, cookware, and equipment. NSF independently tests, audits, certifies, trains, and consults for food, water, health science, sustainability, and consumer product sectors. Here's a list of the standards for tools and equipment. All tools and equipment must be easy to clean. All food contact surfaces must be non-toxic under intended end-use conditions, non-absorbent, corrosion-resistant, and non-reactive. All food contact surfaces must be smooth, free of pits, cracks, crevices, ledges, rivet heads, and bolts. Internal corners and edges must be rounded and smooth. External corners and angles must be smooth and sealed. Coating materials must be non-toxic and easily cleaned. Coating must resist chipping and cracking. Waste and waste liquids must be easily removed. Hand tools. Hand tools are designed to aid in cutting, shaping, moving, or combining foods. They have few, if any, moving parts. Let's spend a little time reviewing some hand tools. Let's begin by looking at knives. Let me let you know that there will be another lesson explicitly about knives and their use in a future lesson. But for now, knives are the most important item in the toolkit. A good knife begins with a single piece of metal, stamped, cut, or best of all, very sharp. Knife construction. Knives have a tip, a cutting edge, a spine, which is not sharp, the bolster, a tang, rivets that hold the handle together, and of course a heel. Knives come in various constructions and in various shapes. Blades are made of carbon steel, stainless steel, high carbon stainless steel, or ceramic. Carbon steel is an alloy of carbon and iron. Stainless steel will not rust, corrode, or discolor and is extremely durable. High carbon stainless steel is an alloy combining the best features of carbon steel and stainless steel. High carbon stainless steel neither corrodes nor discolors. And ceramic is called zirconium oxide, is now used to make knife blades that are extremely sharp, very easy to clean, rust-proof, and non-reactive. Knives come in many shapes as well. There's the French or chef's knife, is a boning knife, paring knife, a cleaver, a slicer, a butcher knife, or an oyster and clam knife. In the coming slides, we will see pictures of the various knives. Here we see a chef's knife or a French knife. This is a boning knife. This is a paring knife. Here we see a cleaver, not to be confused with items that are found in Hollywood movies. Well, actually, they are the same, aren't they? Slicer, a butcher knife or a scimitar. Oyster and clam knives look like this. Measuring and portioning devices. Scales are necessary to determine the weight of an ingredient or the portion of food. Volume measures, such as ladles, portioning scoops, measuring cups, and measuring spoons, determine the amount of an ingredient. Now let's take a quick look at some of these items in the coming slides. Here we have pictures of some scales. And here we have pictures of some volume measures. Much as a thermometer might be thrust under someone's tongue to obtain the temperature of a person's body, STEM-type thermometers, including instant read models, are inserted into food to obtain temperature readings. You might have seen these with Mom's turkey on Thanksgiving. In the next two slides, we'll take a look at some common cookware. The first picture is of a rondeau or a brazier. Here's a common saucepan. Or a santoire or a centuse. Here we see a stock pot with spigot, hotel pans, we've seen these in the serving lines, and of course, a wok. In the next slides, we will take a look at some heavy equipment. Heavy equipment includes gas, electric, or steam-operated appliances used for cooking, reheating, or holding food. These items are usually installed in a fixed location. Here's a picture of some stove tops. Here are some ovens, some broilers and grills, tilt skillets and steam kettles, steamers and deep fat fryers. We would be thoroughly remiss if we neglected to mention safety equipment such as fire extinguishers. It is extremely important that you know both where these items are and how to be very efficient with them. The professional kitchen. The kitchen, remember, is the heart of the food service operation. Work is broken into sections for each particular task, and then each item within that task has a separate station with the tools that are appropriate for it. When designing a kitchen, it is important to use the space wisely so that each of its functions can be accomplished efficiently with sufficient ventilation and space. After studying this unit, you will be able to care for knives properly, use knives properly, cut foods into a variety of classic shapes. The chef's knife. One of the most important tools the student chef must master is his or her knife. Good knife skills are critical to a chef's success. Remember, the knife is the most commonly used tool in the kitchen. Let's discuss these very simple but vital important rules of using the knife safely. Number 1, use the correct knife for the task at hand. Number 2, always cut away from yourself. Number 3, always cut on a clean cutting board. Do not cut on glass, marble, or metal. Number 4, place a damp towel underneath the cutting board to keep it from sliding as you cut. Let's continue with knife safety. Number 5, keep knives sharp. A dull knife is more dangerous than a sharp one. Though that may seem counterintuitive, it is nonetheless true. Number 6, when carrying a knife, hold it pointed down, parallel and close to your leg as you walk. Number 7, a falling knife has no handle. Do not attempt to catch the knife as it falls. Step back and allow it to fall. Number 8, never leave a knife in a sink of water. Anyone reaching into the sink could be injured, or the knife could be dented by pots and other utensils. Let's discuss briefly controlling your knife. Use a grip that is most comfortable for you. Keep the sharp edge of the blade on the cutting board. Grip the item being cut with 3 fingertips and your thumb. Use the second joint of your index finger as a guide. Use smooth, even strokes to slice the food. And as remarked earlier, do not use a dull knife. Cutting with your knife. Slicing. You have your chiffonade, which are finely sliced or shredded leafy vegetables or herbs. Your rondelles, or rounds, disc-shaped slices. Your diagonals, oval-shaped slices. Oblique cut or roll cut are small pieces with 2 angle-cut sides. Finally, lozenges, diamond-shaped pieces, usually of firm vegetables. A few words about the care of your knives. We would like to keep them sharp, as we discussed earlier. For this, we can use a whetstone, which is a sharpening stone, or steel, which does not sharpen. It's used to hone or straighten a blade. Washing and storing. Do not wash knives in commercial dishwashers. And remember, as we discussed earlier, do not submerge them in pots of water. Always wash and dry knives by hand. Horizontal slicing and chopping. To horizontal slice is to butterfly, or cut a pocket into meats, poultry, or fish. It is also a method used to thinly slice soft vegetables. To chop is to cut an item into small pieces where uniformity of size and shape is neither necessary or feasible. Cutting sticks are an example of horizontal slicing. You have your Batonnet, which is a 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch by 2 inches. Your Julienne, which is 1/8 of an inch by 1/8 of an inch by 2 inches. Or your fine Julienne, which is 1/16 by 1/16 by 2 inches. Let us take a look at some dice cuts. You have your Brunaise, which is 1/8 by 1/8 by 1/8. You next have your small dice, 1/4 by 1/4 by 1/4 of an inch. Your medium dice, larger, 1 inch by 1 inch by 1 inch. Your large dice, larger still, increments of 1/4 inch, as you might observe, 3/4 by 3/4 by 3/4. And finally, Paysanne, which is a ½ inch by a ½ inch by an eighth of an inch. Mincing. To mince is to cut items into very small pieces. The terms finely chopped and minced are often used interchangeably. Let us look at round cuts. Tournier, football-shaped pieces with 7 equal sides and blunt ends. The Parisienne are spheres of fruits or vegetables cut with small melon ball cutter. Finally, let's look at the mandoline. The mandoline is a non-mechanical cutting tool that can actually do the job that can be done with a chef's knife. Obviously smaller. Always use a guard or a chef's glove to protect your hand when using this device. Please refer to the picture below to see. We have now reached the end of Lesson 5. After studying this unit, you will be able to describe the basic principles of physiology of the sense of taste and smell, know a variety of herbs, spices, oils, vinegars, wines, and other flavorings, select and apply the use of flavoring ingredients to create, enhance, or alter the natural flavors of a dish. Flavors. The combination of tastes, aromas, and other sensations caused by the presence of a foreign substance in the mouth. Flavor is to food what hue is to color, what timbre is to music. Let's talk about tastes. The sensations we detect when a substance comes in contact with the taste buds on the tongue. That it be sweet, arguably the most pleasant to most people; sour, the opposite of sweet; salty, add sodium chloride by a cook, except for oysters and other shellfish as well as seaweed, in which they are indigenous; bitter, disliked generally, unless balanced by sour or salty flavors; or umami, which is a savory characteristic. How we taste. We experience tasting of flavors via the interaction of taste buds located on the tongue, roof of the mouth, and back of the throat, and our olfactory system, which is the sense of smell. Speaking of the sense of smell, the human olfactory system is composed of olfactory bulbs in the nasal cavity. Food odors once chewed are transferred through a retronasal path, and food must dissolve into the air before flavor is processed as odor. So it is not entirely just taste buds in the sense of smell. There are other factors that affect flavor perception. And remember, it is a perception. Temperature. Warm temperatures offer the strongest tastes. Consistency of food affects flavor as well, as does the presence of contrasting tastes. Bitter, sour, sweet. The interaction of these tastes definitely creates something new, a complexity. And color, of course, affects perception. Therein lies one component of the totally subjective nature of taste. While you might know as a child you didn't like foods that your friend liked, and some of these perceptions and prejudices proceed into our adult years as well. Here's a fascinating look at food flavor profiles. It's sort of a way of looking at taste as music, treble, bass, mid-range, and the way foods and tastes actually fall into those ranges. It's a way of hearing a flavor. Very interesting way of discussing our perception of flavor. So top notes or high notes are the sharpest first flavors or aromas. Citrus, herbs, spices, very trebly, right? Middle notes. The second wave of flavor, more subtle, poultry, vegetables, some fish are kind of mid-rangey. As if we were talking about sound, right? Mid-rangey. Low notes. The most dominant lingering flavor meets that big steak has lots of base, right? Beans, shrooms, mushrooms. Aftertaste or finish, the final flavor. The roundness of a flavor, the roundness of a tone, right? The unity of a dish's various flavors caused by the use of butters, creams, salt, sugars. And of course, the depth of flavor. A broad range of flavor creates depth. Let's take a brief look at seasoning and flavoring. An item added to enhance the natural flavors of a food without changing its taste. Salt is the most common seasoning. An item that adds a new taste to food and alters its natural flavors. Flavorings include herbs, spices, vinegars, and condiments such as mayonnaise, mustard, and various relishes. Herbs and spices. Herbs are any large group of aromatic plants whose leaves, stems, or flowers are used as a flavoring, and they're used either dried or fresh. Spices are any of a large group of aromatic plants whose bark, roots, seeds, buds, or berries are used as flavoring. They're usually used in a dry form, whole, or ground. Condiments can be defined as any item added to a dish for flavor, including herbs, spices, and vinegars, also refers to cooked or prepared flavorings, such as a prepared mustard, relishes, bottled sauces, and whole pickles. Now here's some basic guidelines for seasoning and flavoring. Flavoring should not hide the taste or aroma of a primary ingredient. Flavoring should be combined in balance so as not to overwhelm the palate. Flavoring should not be used to disguise poor quality or poorly prepared products. This might be a tendency that should be avoided. Flavoring should be added sparingly when foods are being cooked over a long period of time. Finally, taste and season your foods frequently during cooking. Salt, the most common seasoning. There's culinary salt or table salt. Rock salt is used for thawing, hardly something you'd put in your food. Kosher salt, large, for curing meats. There's sea salt, ceugris, a sea salt from Normandy, and de fleur de sel, the flower of the salt. Oils. In the coming slides, we will look at various types of oils. Now, oil is a type of fat that remains liquid at room temperature. Cooking oils are refined from various seeds, plants, and vegetables. So let's discuss the various types of oils. Vegetable oils, cottonseed, peanut, grapeseed, sesame seed, and soybean are very commonly used. Canola oil is made from rape seeds. Nut oils, walnut oil, hazelnut, and of course there's others. Peanut oils, for instance. Olive oil, only oil extracted from fruit. Extra virgin oil is 1% free acidity. Virgin and pure are other types. Flavored oils infused with basil, garlic, citrus, and other spices. We've discussed condiments before. Let's look at them again in more detail. We have relishes, pickles, chutneys, fish sauce, ketchup, prepared mustards such as yellow, Dijon, and whole grain, and also soy sauce. A word about American wines. Most wines are named for the variety of grape that is used. The U.S. government requires that 75% of wine comes from a particular grape. We have red varietals, Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Nebbiolo, Pinot Noir, Syrah, and Sangiovese. For white varietals, we have Chardonnay, Riesling, and Sauvignon Blanc. Sparkling wines require a second fermentation which takes place in the bottle. Called méthode Chardonnay, the process requires that the wine be aged for 1 or 2 years after its second fermentation. Alternatively, the person who makes the wine can use the Chardonnay process. With this less expensive process, the second fermentation takes place in a tank, and then the carbonated wine is bottled. Fortified wines. Wines usually have an alcohol content of 10 to 15%. Fortified wines are wines whose alcohol content has been increased from 18 to 22%. Now, port is traditionally produced in the Douro Valley of Portugal with a blend of 5 red grape varieties. Ports are generally divided into 3 categories. Tawny ports are pale brown and mellow. Vintage ports have a deep, dark brick burgundy color, and ruby ports are blends of younger ports of lesser quality than those designated as vintage ports. They tend to have a bright, almost crimson color. Now, sherry is a fortified white wine from the Jerez region of southern Spain. Sherries can range from pale golden yellow and very dry to amber-colored, thick and sweet. Madeira is a fortified wine from the island of Madeira. It is made from white grapes. Its characteristic light brown color and toffee caramel flavor are produced when the developing wine is placed in wooden barrels and heated for a period of time. Marsala is a fortified wine from western Sicily. It is wine made from grapes that are dried prior to fermentation. This increases the wine's sugar content. After fermentation and fortification, Marsala is aged in wooden barrels. Evaluating wines is done via 3 separate criteria: aroma, flavor, and body. Aroma. Most wines present a collection of different aromas, called the bouquet. Individual aromas can often be distinguished, especially with practice, from a complex bouquet. The wine's aroma reminds the taster of some other scent, usually that of a fruit, flower, herb, spice, or other easily distinguished item. Flavor. The alcohol in wine contributes very little to its flavor. Rather, winemakers try to create flavors by adjusting the balances between the sugars and acids in the wine. These sugars and acids interact, exciting the taste buds to recognize the wine as sweet, dry, or somewhere in between. Body. Finally, the body is the weight of the wine in the mouth and is generally related to the amount of alcohol and or glycerin it contains. A wine's body is usually described as light, medium, or full. Traditionally, folks think about matching wines with colors. Red wines are served with beef, veal, pork, and lamb, white wines with fish, shellfish, and poultry. Although this rule may still be true for many pairings, do not be afraid to ignore it once in a while, or actually often. We can match with tastes. Sweet dishes with an element of sweetness often pair well with sweet or slightly sweet wines, for instance. Or sourness if a dish has a citrus, especially lemony top note. Usually an acidic wine goes well with it. Salty foods will mute the sweetness and enhance the fruitiness of a wine. Be careful of pairing wine in high tannins such as Syrah or Cabernet Sauvignon with a food particularly rich in tannins such as walnuts. The combination will render the wine almost unbearably bitter, dry, or astringent. Food and wine can also be matched via their strengths, opposites, or their origins. Don't be afraid to be creative and mix and match. As a general rule, do not cook with a wine that you would not drink. Use quality products. Pay attention to the cooking time once wine or other alcoholic beverages have been added. The longer a dish cooks, the more alcohol evaporates, thus concentrating its flavors, especially acidic flavors. Beer is an alcoholic beverage containing from 3% to 12% alcohol by volume. It is made from water, hops, and malted barley, fermented by yeast, much like wine, to produce alcohol and carbon dioxide. Liquors are various distilled fermented grains, vegetables, or the like. In distillation, the water component of the fermented liquid is cooked off and the alcohol is concentrated. The resulting clear liquid can be colored or flavored during aging. Gin is a clear spirit distilled from grains and flavored with juniper berries. Rum is distilled from fermented sugar. Tequila is clear to amber-colored spirit made in the tequila region of Mexico from the fermented sap of the agave cactus. Vodka is traditionally flavorless and colorless liquid distilled from potatoes, fruits, and grains. Whiskey is distilled from various grains. After distillation, whiskey is aged in oak barrels until flavors are mellow and smooth. There are many types of whiskey. We have bourbon, Canadian, Irish, rye, and Scotch. Brandy is an alcoholic beverage made by distilling fermented fruit, like wine, or fruit pulp and skin. Grape brandy is a brandy distilled from white wine or fermented grape pulp and skins. It is aged in wooden casks, usually oak, which contributes to its rich amber-brown colors and imparts additional mellowing flavors and aromas. Cognac is one of the best-known brandies. It's made in France's Cognac region, and only brandy there can be called cognac. It's twice distilled from blends of various wines that tend to be thin, tart, and low in alcohol, bad for drinking, but great for brandy making. Interesting. Armagnac is another well-known French brandy from the Armagnac region of southwestern France. Fruit brandy is a brandy made from fermenting fruits and other grapes. This term should not be confused with fruit-flavored brandy, which is grape brandy that has been flavored with the extract of another fruit. Fruit brandies include Calvados, Kirschwasser, Framboise, Pierre, and Slovitz. Liqueurs are traditionally made from herbs, fruits, nuts, spices, flowers, or other flavorings infused into an alcohol base. The base can be neutral spirits, brandy, rum, or even whiskey. All liqueurs have varying degrees of added sugar. Many of the newer liqueurs, especially less expensive products, are made with flavoring extracts, essential oils, and even artificial flavors. Cream liqueurs are liqueurs blended with cream. They are thick with mild, comforting flavors. They do not keep long once opened, so they need to be stored in a refrigerator. Crème liqueurs, such as crème de coco, crème de menthe, or crème de cassis, contain no cream. Rather, additional sugar gives them thick, syrupy, creamy texture and a sweet flavor. There are many varieties of vinegars. We have wine vinegars, malt vinegars, distilled vinegars, cider vinegars, rice vinegars, flavored vinegars, and finally, balsamic vinegars. As for definition, vinegar is a sour-tasting liquid containing acetic acid obtained by fermenting dilute alcoholic liquids, typically wine, cider, or beer, and is used as a condiment. It's also used for pickling. After studying this unit, you will be able to describe the best plan to work more efficiently, distinguish basic flavoring techniques, prepare items needed prior to actual cooking, and finally to construct and use the standard breading procedure. The prep list is a blueprint for how food production is going to be achieved during the workday. An overview of what needs to be done and how long it will take to do it. The order in which assignments should be completed, and finally, how each cook may interact with each other in the kitchen. Writing the prep list. A prep list is not just a rewriting of recipes. Remember, it is a reading through recipes and composing a written map of how to accomplish the tasks necessary to prepare the recipes. The first step in organizing your work is to read and understand the recipes you will be using for the day or for the week or maybe for the month. Once each item is identified and quantified, the next step will be to schedule your tasks through prioritization. Now you'll have to select your tools and equipment. All tools, equipment, and work surfaces must be clean and sanitized. Knives should be honed and sharpened. And remember, there's a difference, as we discussed in Lesson 5. Measuring devices should be checked for accuracy periodically. Ovens and cooking surfaces should be preheated as necessary. Mixing bowls, saucepans, and storage containers should be the correct size for the task at hand. Selecting tools and equipment continued. Serving plates, cookware, utensils, hand tools, and other necessary small wares should be gathered and stored nearby. Food should be gathered and stored conveniently at the proper temperature. Expiration dates on foods need to be checked periodically for validity. Sanitizing solution, hand towels, disposable gloves, and trash receptacles should be conveniently located. The next step is measuring and preparing ingredients. You need to weigh and measure all ingredients. Clarify your butter. Toast nuts and spices and get them ready. Make breadcrumbs. Prepare bouquet, garni, and sachet. Marinate meats and poultry. Prepare rubs and pastes. Steep dry ingredients. Using a typical balance scale has 3 basic steps. Place an empty container on the left. Set a counterbalance to that container on the right. And finally, use weights and a sliding beam weight to add an amount equal to the amount of the ingredient needed, which should be fairly obvious once you get to that point. Here's a picture depicting the placement of the ingredient on the left side of the scale until the 2 platforms balance. Let us now turn our attention to clarifying butter. Part 1. Slowly warm the butter in a saucepan over low heat without boiling or agitation. Next, as the butter melts, milk solids rise to the top as the foam and the water sinks to the bottom. When the butter is completely melted, skim the milk solids from the top. Clarifying butter, Part 2. When all of the milk solids have been removed, ladle the butter fat into a clean saucepan, being careful to leave the water in the bottom of the pan. The clarified butter is now ready for your use. Flavoring. A bouquet garni and sachet are used to introduce flavorings, seasonings, and aromatics into stocks, sauces, soups, and stews. Marinating is a process of soaking meat and poultry in seasoned liquid to flavor and tenderize it. Rubs are finely ground mixtures of dry herbs and spices used to season meat and poultry. A bouquet garni is a selection of herbs, usually fresh, and vegetables tied into a bundle with twine. A standard bouquet garni consists of parsley stems, celery, thyme, leeks, and carrots. A sachet is made by tying seasonings together in cheesecloth. A standard sachet consists of peppercorns, bay leaves, parsley, stems, thyme, cloves, and optionally some garlic. And here we see pictured the setup for the standard breading procedure. We have the product to be breaded, the flour, an egg wash, some breadcrumbs, and finally, the pan to hold the breaded product. We have reached the end of Lesson 7. Next we will cover principles of cooking. After studying this unit, you will be able to understand how heat is transferred to foods through convection, conduction, and radiation, understand how heat affects foods, and understand the basic principles of various cooking methods. Heat transfer. Cooking can be defined as the transfer of energy from a heat source to foods. To cook successfully, you must first understand the ways in which heat is transferred: conduction, convection, and radiation. You should also understand what the application of heat does to proteins, sugars, starches, water, and fats in foods. In the next few slides, we will begin to examine that. Continue our discussion of heat transfer. Conduction can be defined as the movement of heat from item to item via direct contact. It's slow because there must be contact between molecules. Water is decidedly better than air, and it's faster to boil. Convection is the transfer of heat through a fluid or gas. Natural convection is the circulation of heat because of the rising of warmer gases or liquids. Mechanical convection relies on fans. Now, radiation does not require physical contact. Infrared cooking uses magnetic or ceramic elements, and it gives off radiant heat waves. Microwave cooking, the energy will penetrate the food. Let's take a look at the effects of heat. Proteins do coagulate, which is the transformation from liquid to semi-liquid to a solid state. In other words, it could be liquid or semi-liquid, and it will transfer to a solid state. Now, starches gelatinize, which means they become jelly-like. Sugars caramelize. They have turned to a brown color and are often used as a flavoring or a coloring. Water will evaporate, and fat, of course, melts. In the coming slides, we will look at cooking methods, primarily moist heat and dry heat, and the various ways in which you could use either. Types of cooking methods. Dry heat cooking methods. These include broiling, grilling, roasting, baking, sautéing, and frying. They have richer flavor caused by the browning. Moist heat cooking methods. These include poaching, boiling, steaming. Use either water or steam. Maintain and enhance natural flavors of foods. And of course, there's the combination cooking methods, which employ both dry and moist methods. Let's take a look at some dry heat cooking methods. Broiling. The heat source is above the food, and temperatures can be as high as 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Grilling is similar, however, the source of heat is below the food. Roasting and baking, these surround the food with heat. Sautéing uses conduction to transfer heat from a hot pan to food. Stir-frying, a form of sautéing, uses a rounded wok which diffuses the heat. It's very good for flipping the food up in the air. Frying, of course, cooking with fat. Let's take a quick look at some characteristics of moist heat cooking methods. Poaching. It uses less cooking time. It is usually used for delicately flavored foods. Simmering often is used for tenderizing, with a longer immersion in water. Boiling is great, rapidly rolling amounts of water. Steaming does not require nearly as long cooking times as the other methods. The table on this slide shows the specifications of the various methods: poaching, simmering, boiling, and steaming, as long as liquids conditions, and of course various uses for each of the methods. In looking at combination cooking methods, the first step is often to brown the meat ingredient using dry heat, and the second step will be to complete the cooking by simmering the food in liquid, either braising a small amount of liquid or stewing enough liquid to cover the food. After studying this unit, you will be able to prepare a variety of sauces, recognize and classify sauces, and use thickening agents. Stock. Definition: a flavored liquid. A good stock is the key to a great soup, sauce, or braised dish. The French appropriately call the stock fond, base, as stock is the basis for many classic and modern dishes. Types of stock: white stock, raw bones and vegetables simmered in water with seasonings. Brown stock are bones and vegetables that have first been browned, then simmered in water with seasonings. Fish stock or fumet, fish bones or crustacean shells cooked slowly with vegetables and seasonings in water. Court bouillon, vegetables and seasonings simmered in water with acidic liquid. The ingredients of stock: bones, beef, veal, chicken or fish, lamb, turkey, ham or game. Mirepoix, mixture of 50% onions, 25% carrots, and 25% celery. Seasonings are the third ingredient, principally peppercorns, bay leaves, thyme, parsley stems, and optionally garlic. Do not add salt. The cooling and handling of stock. This is a two-stage cooling method recommended for keeping stock out of the danger zone. First, cool the stock from 135 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit or 52 degrees to 21 degrees centigrade within 2 hours. Second, reduce the temperature from 79 to below 41 degrees Fahrenheit, 21 degrees to below 5 degrees centigrade, in an additional 4 hours for a total of 6 hours. This is very important. Mirepoix. The overlying principles of stock making. Start the stock in cold water. Simmer the stock gently. Next, skim the stock frequently. Always remember to strain the stock very carefully. Cool the stock quickly and store it promptly and properly, and always remember to degrease the stock. White stock. Neutral stock made from beef, veal, or chicken bones. Blanching bones. Wash and cut up the bones, place them in a stock pot and cover with cold water. Bring the water to a boil over high heat. As soon as the water comes to a boil, skim the rising impurities, drain the water from the bones, and discard. Then finally, refill the pot with cold water and proceed with the stock recipe. Brown stock, made from chicken, veal, beef, or game bones. Caramelizing. Do not blanch the bones. Place the cut up bones in a roasting pan, 1 layer deep. It is better to roast several pans of bones rather than overfill one pan. Roast the bones for approximately 1 hour in a hot oven at 375 degrees Fahrenheit, stirring occasionally. Brown the bones thoroughly, but do not allow them to burn. Finally, transfer the roasted bones from the pan to the stock pot. Here are caramelized bones. Brown stock continued. Deglazing the pan. Place the pan on the stove top over medium heat. Add enough water to cover the bottom of the pan, approximately a ½ inch deep. Next, stir and scrape the pan bottom to dissolve and remove all the caramelized materials while the water heats. Finally, pour the deglazing liquid over the bones into the stock pot. Here is a graphic representation of deglazing the pan. Brown stock continued. Caramelizing mirepoix. Add a little of the reserve fat from the roasted bones to the roasting pan after it has been deglazed. Next, saute the mirepoix, browning the vegetables well and evenly without burning them. Add caramelized mirepoix to stock pot. Here we see a graphic representation of caramelizing mirepoix. Now we will turn our attention to fish stock and fumet, generally made with the bones and heads of fish and or crustacean shells. Oily fish are not generally used. Bones are not blanched due to loss of flavor. Fumets differ from stock because they are strongly flavored and contain an acidic ingredient such as wine, white wine, or lemon juice. They require less time than other stocks, 35 to 40 minutes is usually sufficient to extract full flavor. Let's look at vegetable stock now. It should be clear and light colored, contains no gelatin, and has little body. It may be used as a substitute for meat stocks in vegetarian dishes for vegetarian clientele. Strongly flavored vegetables from the cruciferous family or those that are bitter should be avoided. Potatoes and other starchy vegetables will cloud the stock and should also be avoided. Commercial bases. Powder or paste flavoring added to water used to replace genuine stock. Even the best base is a poor substitute for well-made stock. Bases vary greatly in quality and price. Sodium salt is the main ingredient in many bases. Court bouillon, commonly used to poach fish and shellfish. A flavored liquid, usually water and wine or vinegar, in which vegetables and seasonings have been simmered to impart their flavors and aromas. Not exactly stock, but prepared in the same manner. Glaze, a dramatically reduced stock. 1 gallon of stock produces merely 1 to 2 cups of glaze. Glaze de viande is made from brown stock. Glaze de volaille is made from white stock. Sauces. With a few exceptions, a sauce is a liquid plus thickening agent plus seasonings. Follow these procedures for fine sauce making. 1. Make good stocks. 2. Use thickening agents properly to achieve the desired texture, flavor, and appearance. 3. Use seasonings properly to achieve the desired flavors. Thickening agents. Roux is the principal means used to thicken sauces. Roux is a combination of equal parts by weight of flour and fat. White roux, cooked only briefly, used in white sauces. Blonde roux, cooked slightly longer to take on a little color, used in ivory-colored sauces. Brown roux is cooked until it develops a darker color and a nutty aroma, used in brown sauces. Here is a photograph of white, blonde, and brown roux. Incorporating roux into liquid. There are 2 ways to incorporate roux into liquid without causing lumps. Cold stock can be added to hot roux while stirring vigorously with a whisk. Room temperature roux can be added to hot stock while stirring vigorously with a whisk. Other thickening agents: cornstarch or slurry, arrowroot, beurre beurre, liaison. Emulsification can be permanent or semi-permanent. Sauce families. Leading or mother sauces are the foundation for the entire classic repertoire of hot sauces. The 5 leading sauces: béchamel, volonté, espagnole, which is brown, tomato, and hollandaise. The béchamel family are sauces that are cream, cheese, mornay, mantua, or sabis. Poulet family. Poulet. Allemande sauces. Aurora, horseradish, or mushroom. Fish sauces are Barce, Cardinal, or Normandy. Finally, the supreme sauces, Albufera, Hungarian, or Ivory. The espagnole, or brown sauce. Demi-glace, Jus lait, Bordelaise, Chasseur, the Chateaubriand, the Chevreul, the Madura or port, the Marquand de Vin, mushroom, peregrine, piquant, poivrade, Robert, or charcuterie. The tomato sauce family: Creole, Spanish, or Milanese. The hollandaise family: Béarnaise, Chiron, Foyot, Grimro, Maltaise, or mousseline chantilly sauce. Butter in sauce: compound butter, Monterre-Albiere, Beurre Blanc, or Beurre Rouge. We have now reached the end of Lesson 9. After studying this unit, you will be able to prepare a variety of clear and thick soups, garnish and serve soups appropriately. Great soups can be made from the finest and most expensive ingredients or from leftovers from the previous evening's meal dinner service and trimmings from the day's productions. Escoffier's classification of soups: there are clear soups, purees, coulisses, bisques, volontés, cream soups, special soups, vegetable soups, and finally, foreign soups. Here's the modern classification of soup. Clear soups include broths and consommes. Thick soups are generally cream soups, puree soups. Then finally there's bisques, chowders, and cold soup. Clear soups are broths, broth-based soups, or consommes. The procedure for preparing consommes: start with cold, grease-free stock. Add clear meat or clarification. Slowly bring to a simmer. Clear meat will form a raft. Create a hole in the raft to allow liquid to bubble through. After simmering, carefully strain through several layers of cheesecloth. Here we see a graphic representation of finished consommé. Thick soups: these are cream soups, which are thickened with the roux or other starch, or pureed soups. Rely on a puree of the main ingredient to thicken. Some puree soups are finished with cream, and other puree soups are thickened slightly with roux. Pureed soup. Other soups: bisque, generally made from crustaceans and thickened with roux. Chowder, hearty soups with chunks of the main ingredient and garnishes. Cold soups: some require cooking and some are actually prepared cold. Below is a graphic representation of a finely prepared cold soup. Guidelines for garnishing your soups: the garnish should always be attractive. The meats and vegetables used should be neatly cut into an appropriate and uniform shape and size. The garnish texture and flavor should complement the soup. Starches and vegetables used as garnishes should be cooked separately. Garnishes should be cooked just until done. Meat and poultry should be tender but not falling apart. Service of soup: serve cold soup cold, at a temperature below 41 degrees Fahrenheit, often served in an iced bowl with an iced spoon. Serve hot soup hot, near boiling at 210 degrees Fahrenheit is the ideal temperature. We have reached the end of Lesson 10. Next, we will cover the principles of meat cooking. After studying this unit, you will be able to understand the structure and composition of meat, understand meat inspection and grading practices, Purchase meats appropriate for your needs, store meats properly, prepare meats for cooking, and apply various cooking methods to meats. Beef, veal, lamb, and pork are all meats. Meats often consume the largest portion of your food purchasing dollar. We will discuss how to protect your investment. We must always take care when purchasing and storing these commodities. Muscle composition. Muscle tissue gives meat its characteristic appearance. The amount of connective tissues determines the meat's tenderness. Muscle tissue is approximately 72% water, 20% protein, 7% fat, and 1% minerals. Here we see a graphic representation of muscle tissue. We can see the muscle, the tendon, and in the insert we can see bundles of muscles as they would appear if they were blown up from what is in the middle of the picture. Here we see the crosscut of a bundle of muscle fiber. We can see the blood vessel, the individual fibers, the fiber bundles, and of course the connective tissue. Inspection and grading of meats. All meats are inspected by the USDA. What you see here are two stamps that you might see on meat that has been inspected. Here we see the USDA quality grades. For beef, we have USDA Prime, Choice, Select, Commercial, Utility, Cutter, Canner. For veal, we have USDA Prime, Choice, Good, Standard, and Utility. Lamb can be USDA Prime, Choice, Good, or Utility. And pork can be USDA number 1, number 2, number 3, or Utility. As you can see, it's certainly good practice to know these grades well before purchasing any meat. Here is a USDA quality grade stamp for Prime. Aging meats. Today, most pre-proportioned or pre-cut meats are packaged and shipped in a vacuum-sealed plastic package. Thus, wet aging is the process of storing vacuum-packaged meats under refrigeration for up to 6 weeks. Dry aging is the process of storing fresh meats in an environment of controlled temperature, humidity, and airflow for up to 6 weeks. This allows enzymes and microorganisms to break down connective tissues. Dry aging is actually the beginning of the natural decomposition process. Dry-aged meats can lose from 5 to 20% of their weight through moisture evaporation. Preparing meats for cooking. Tying and trussing. Tying meat to form a uniform shape. Or we have barding, which is adding a layer of fat to the outside of the meat. Or larding, inserting small strips of fat into the meat. Purchasing meat. Styles of cuts. There's primal, subprimal, and fabricated. Primal, divisions of muscle, bone, and connective tissue produced by initial butchering of the carcass. Subprimal are basic cuts produced from each primal. Fabricated are individual portion cuts from the subprimal. Here are some specifications you should be aware of. The IMPS is the International Meat Purchasing Specifications. The NAMP is the National Association of Meat Purveyors. And of course, portion control, ready to cook and serve. Storing of meat. Meat is highly perishable and a potentially hazardous food if not handled correctly. Store at temperatures between 30 degrees Fahrenheit and 35 degrees Fahrenheit. When freezing, do so rapidly to minus 50 degrees Fahrenheit. And always use moisture and vapor-proof packaging prevent freezer burn. Let's begin to look at cooking methods. Dry heat cooking methods. Must use high quality, tender cuts of meat. These dry heat methods are broiling and grilling, roasting, sautéing, pan frying, and deep frying. Continuing on cooking methods, moist heat cooking methods used quite often to tenderize tougher cuts of meat, such as simmering. And then, of course, there are combination cooking methods. Both dry and moist heat are used to achieve the desired result. These would be braising or stewing. Here's a graphical representation of the degree of doneness of meats. We can see from top to bottom the rarest. The center two items are medium, and on the bottom is a well-done piece of meat. In a commercial setting, larger cuts of meats are going to be more the norm. So let's take a look at the special considerations for such pieces of meat. Carryover cooking. Cooking does not stop the moment that the roast is removed from the oven. It actually continues to cook inward through conduction. Resting allows the juices to redistribute themselves evenly throughout the roast. Carving. Roasts are always carved against the grain. Carving with the grain will produce long, stringy, tough slices. We have now reached the end of Lesson 11. Next, we will learn about poultry. After studying this unit, you'll be able to understand the structure and composition of poultry, identify various kinds and classes of poultry, understand poultry inspection and grading practices, purchase poultry appropriate for your commercial needs, store poultry properly, prepare poultry for cooking, and finally, to apply various cooking methods to poultry. Poultry is the collective term for domesticated birds which are bred for eating. Poultry is generally the least expensive and the most versatile of all main dish foods. The muscle composition of poultry contains no intramuscular fat. Fat is stored under the skin and in the abdominal cavity. Poultry fat has a lower melting point than that of other animal fats. Here's some more to consider about muscle composition of poultry. Dark meat. Thigh and leg of the flightless birds. The full body of flight birds. It contains more myoglobin, contains more fat and connective tissue, and it requires a longer cooking time. White meat is the breast and wing of flightless birds, larger muscle mass, contains less fat, and can dry out if overcooked. Let's talk about identifying poultry. Here is a list of the categories of poultry recognized by the USDA. Chicken, duck, goose, guinea, pigeon, and of course, turkey. Chicken, or in French, poulet, is the most popular and widely eaten poultry in the world. Its being inexpensive and readily available probably contributes to that fact. It contains both light and dark meat. It is relatively lean. It is available fresh or frozen in a variety of forms. It is an extremely versatile poultry. Chicken classes. The game hen is 5 to 6 weeks old. A broiler roasters are 3 to 5 months old. A capon is under 8 months old. And a stewing hen is generally over 10 months old. Game hen. It's a young or immature progeny of Cornish chickens, or of a Cornish chicken and a white rock chicken. Game hens are very flavorful, generally at 2 pounds or less, to split and broil, grill, or roast. The broiler fryer is a young chicken with soft, smooth, textured skin, relatively lean, with a flexible breastbone, 3 pounds 8 ounces or less, and really you can utilize any cooking method with the broiler fryer. Capon, a surgically castrated male with tender meat, soft, smooth skin, bred for well-flavored meat. Capons contain a high portion of light to dark meat, relatively higher in fat, can go 6 to 10 pounds, and are generally cooked by roasting. Duck. Classes of duck are broiler, roaster, and mature. Duck contains only dark meat, with large amounts of fat, high percentage of bone and fat to meat, generally prepared by roasting. Goose. Classes of goose are young and mature. Contains only dark meat, like the duck. Very fatty skin. Popular at holidays. Served best with acidic fruit-based sauces to offset the fattiness. Our next variety of poultry is guinea. Classes are young and mature. They're a domesticated descendant of a game bird. Has both light and dark meat, like a chicken. Tender enough to saute. Contains very little fat. Is usually barded prior to roasting. Pigeon, commonly called squab, contains only dark meat. The meat, however, is very tender. It contains very little fat, suited for broiling, sautéing, or roasting. Turkey. Classes of turkey are fryer, roaster, a young, yearling, or mature turkey. It's the second most popular category of poultry in the United States, behind chicken. Contains both light and dark meat, with a relatively small amount of fat. Young turkey can be prepared in any manner. Ratites. These include the ostrich, which is classified as red meat, the emu, which is low in fat and calorie, and the rhea, often prepared the same as veal. Now, when we're speaking of giblets, we're talking about the organs of these birds. Livers, often sautéed, broiled, or used in pâté. Gizzards, a bird's second stomach, often deep-fried. Hearts, sometimes served sautéed or creamed. And necks can be used to add flavor to stock. Nutrition. Poultry is an economical source of high-quality protein. In that regard, it's similar to other meats. Chicken and turkey breast are lower in fat and higher in niacin than other lean meats. Niacin has been shown to be an aid in the prevention of heart disease. Generally, dark meat contains more niacin and riboflavin than white meat. Inspection. All poultry produced for public consumption has to be inspected by the USDA. It is processed under strict sanitary guidelines. All poultry must be found to be wholesome and fit for human consumption. Grading. USDA has 3 grades for poultry: A, B, and C. Grade A poultry is free of deformities, thick flesh with well-developed fat layer, free of pin feathers, free of cuts, tears, and broken bones. Grades B and C are used primarily for processed poultry products. When purchasing poultry, you'll need to consider whether you would like to have it fresh or frozen, whole or cut up, bone-in or boneless, and portion control, of course, individually quick frozen, which is IQF is the acronym, ground, or prepared and convenience items. Storing poultry. Like all meats, poultry is a potentially hazardous food. It is highly perishable. particularly susceptible to contamination by Salmonella bacteria. Store on ice at 32 degrees Fahrenheit to 34 degrees Fahrenheit. Thaw under refrigeration. Sanitation alert. Be sure that all equipment used in the preparation of poultry is sanitized before and after coming in contact with poultry. Be careful that juices and trimmings from poultry do not come in contact with other foods. Finally, rinse poultry in cold running water and dry before cooking to remove those collected juices. Procedure for cutting a bird in half. 1. Square up the bird by placing it on its back and pressing on the legs and breast to create a more uniform appearance. 2. Place the bird on its breast and hold its tail tightly with the thumb and forefinger of one hand. Using a rigid boning knife and a single swift movement, cut alongside the backbone from the bird's tail to the head. Finally, lay the bird on the cutting board and remove the backbone by cutting through the ribs, connecting it to the breast. Cutting procedure continued. 4. Bend the bird back, breaking the breastbone free. 5. Run your fingers along the bone to separate the meat from it. Pull the bone completely free. Be sure to remove the flexible cartilage completely. 6. Cut through the skin to separate the bird into 2 halves. The halves are ready to be cooked. For a more attractive presentation, follow steps 7 and 8. Finally, trim off the wingtips and the ends of the leg bone. 8. Make a slit in the skin below the leg and tuck the leg bone into the slit. Now we will look at the procedure for cutting a bird into pieces. Remove the leg by pulling the leg and thigh away from the breast and cutting through the skin and flesh toward the thigh joint. Next, cut down to the thigh joint. Twist the leg to break the joint and cut the thigh and leg from the carcass. Be careful to trim around the oyster meat, that's the tender morsel of meat located next to the backbone. Leave it attached to the thigh. Repeat with the other leg. To split the breast, follow steps 2 through 6 for cutting a bird in half. Cut the breast into 2 halves. Continuing, the bird is now cut into 4 quarters. To cut the bird into 6 pieces, separate the thigh from the leg by making a cut guided by the line of fat on the inside of the thigh and leg. To cut the bird into 8 pieces, separate the wing from the breast by cutting the joint, or split the breast, leaving a portion of the breast meat attached to the wing. We have now reached the end of Lesson 12. After studying this unit, you will be able to recognize the primal, subprimal, and fabricated cuts of meats, perform basic butchering procedures, and apply appropriate cooking methods to several common cuts of various meat. Beef is the meat of domesticated cattle. Although Americans are consuming less beef today than we once did, we still consume far more beef than any other meat. Primary cuts of beef. The steer is cut into 4 pieces down the backbone and between the 12th and 13th ribs. There we get the forequarter and the hindquarter. Primal cuts are: the forequarter includes chuck, brisket and shank, rib and short plate. The hindquarter includes short loin, sirloin, flank, and round. You see a graphic representation of the primal cuts of beef. Fabricated cuts. Individual portions of meat cut from subprimal. Roasts, steaks, and chops. Take a moment to review the picture. Boxed beef. Industry terminology for primal and subprimal cuts of beef that are vacuum sealed and packed into cardboard boxes for shipping from the packing plant to retailers and food service operations are called or considered boxed beef. Organ meats, often called offal, are consisted of liver, heart, kidney, tongue, tripe, which is the stomach lining, sweetbreads, thymus glands, and extremities, such as the oxtail. Beef is a major source of protein and the primary food source of zinc, as well as B vitamins, trace minerals, and other nutrients. Fat. Marbling. Whitish streaks of inner and intramuscular fat causes meat to be juicy and tender. Subcutaneous. External fat. The fat layer between the hide and the muscles, usually trimmed to a 1/4 inch during butchering. Lamb. Lamb is the meat of sheep slaughtered when they are less than 1 year old. Lamb is quite tender and can be prepared by almost any cooking method. Primal cuts. Lamb primal cuts are cross-set sections that contain both bilateral halves. For example, the primal leg contains both legs. Primal cuts include the shoulder, the breast, the rack, also known as the hotel rack, the loin, and the leg. Here we see two graphic representations of rack. We have the lamb rack and the Frenched lamb rack. The loin is located between the primal rib and leg. It contains rib 13 and portions of the backbone. It is very tender. You may use any dry heat cooking method you prefer. Leg. It is the posterior portion of the carcass. It contains the sirloin, and it does contain several bones. Nutrition from consuming lamb is an economical source of high-quality protein, lean and lower in cholesterol than other red meat. It is a good source of iron as compared with chicken, fish, or poultry. Has less marbling than other red meats, and is very tender. Veal. Veal is the meat of young, usually male, calves that are byproducts of the dairy industry. Young veal has a firm texture, light pink color, and very little fat. Veal's delicate flavor is complemented by classical and modern sauces. The primal cut. After slaughter, carcass is split down the backbone or cut between the 11th and 12th ribs. We look at foresaddle and hindsaddle cuts. Here is a graphic representation of the primal cuts of veal. 5 primal cuts. Foresaddle, which includes the shoulder, foreshank, and breast, as well as the rib. And then hindsaddle, which includes loin and leg. Organ meats, sweetbreads, the thymus glands. They shrink as the animals age, so they're not available from older cattle. Calves' liver, tender with mild flavor. Kidneys, more popular outside of the United States. We have the nutrition from veal. It's a major source of protein, niacin, zinc, and B vitamins. There's less marbling than mature beef. When trimmed to visible fat, it is leaner than beef and many cuts of pork or chicken. We have now reached the end of Lesson 13. After studying this unit, you will be able to recognize a variety of vegetables, procure vegetables appropriate for your needs, store vegetables properly, know how vegetables are preserved, prepare vegetables for cooking or service, and use cooking methods for vegetables. Identifying vegetables: cabbages, brassica, bok choy, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, head cabbage, kale, kohlrabi, naba cabbage, and savoy. Fruit vegetables: avocados, eggplants, peppers, which include both the hot and sweet variety, tomatillos, and tomatoes. Continuing with our identification of vegetables, we have gourds and squashes. We have chayotes, cucumbers, and squashes, which include winter, which are acorn, banana, butternut, or pumpkin, and then the summer variety, which is zucchini or yellow. Let us continue our identification of vegetables. Let's talk about greens. Those include collards, mustard, sorrel, spinach, Swiss chard, and turnip greens. Yes, there are many vegetable types, mushrooms and truffles. We have black trumpet, clamshell, anocacte, hen of the woods, pom-pom blanc, porcini, portobello, shiitake, oyster, white. Those are all mushrooms. Now truffles are white or black. Onions. There are bulb onions, garlic. Yes, garlic is considered an onion. Leeks, scallions, and shallots. Pods and seeds. There's corn. There's okra. There's legumes, which include fresh beans, green beans, and haricots. There are dry beans, such as black beans, black-eyed beans, lentils, red kidney beans, pinto beans, and finally, great northern beans. Roots and tubers. These include beets, carrots, celery root, Jerusalem artichokes, jicama, parsnips, radishes, rutabaga, turnips, and water chestnuts. Stalks. Artichokes, asparagus, bamboo shoots, celery, fennel, hearts of palm, and nopales. When purchasing fresh vegetables, you must consider the following. Vegetables are sold by weight and count. They're packed in lugs, bushels, flats, and crates. Some common vegetables can be purchased pre-processed. They're trimmed, cleaned, and pre-cut to specification. Storage. Hardy vegetables are best stored at cool temperatures, 40 degrees Fahrenheit to 60 degrees Fahrenheit. More delicate vegetables are best stored at 34 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit. A separate cooler for vegetables is best. Irradiated vegetables. Process uses ionizing radiation to sterilize the food. It destroys bacteria, parasites, and insects. It does not affect the taste or texture of the food. Canned vegetables. Raw vegetables are cleaned and placed in sealed containers, then subjected to high heat. The grading of canned vegetables. U.S. Grade A, or fancy, U.S. Grade B, or extra select, or U.S. Grade C, which is considered standard. Canned vegetables are perfect in cases of standard-sized cans. Frozen vegetables. Almost as convenient as canned. Severely inhibits the growth of microorganisms that can cause spoilage. Grading the same as canned as reviewed in the previous slide. And IQF is an acronym for individually quick frozen. Finally, dried vegetables. Drying vegetables dramatically alters the flavor, texture, and appearance. The loss of moisture concentrates the flavors and sugars, and it greatly extends the shelf life. We have now reached the end of Lesson 9. Lesson 15. Potatoes, grains, and pasta. After studying this unit, you will be able to identify a variety of potatoes, choose various cooking methods to potatoes, identify a variety of grains, apply various cooking methods, identify pasta products, and produce fresh and cook pasta. Potatoes, grains, which are corn, rice, wheat, and others, and pasta are collectively known as starches. Potatoes. New potatoes are small, immature potatoes that are harvested before their starches develop. Mealy potatoes, also known as starchy potatoes, have a high starch content and thick skins. They are best for baking. Waxy potatoes, low starch content and thin-skinned, best for boiling. Sweet potatoes. Yellow flesh sweet potatoes are dry with mealy texture. Orange flesh sweet potatoes are moister and higher in sugar. Yams have flesh colors range from white to a deep red, less sweet than sweet potatoes. The storage of potatoes. Potatoes should be stored with temperatures between 50 degrees Fahrenheit and 65 degrees Fahrenheit. Do not store in the refrigerator. Store it in a dark place, and do not wash until ready for use. Grains. Botanically, grains are grasses that bear edible seeds. They include corn, rice, and wheat. What we have here is a graphic representation of the structure of typical grain. Milling. We have stone grinding, cracking, grinding, hulling, and purling. Rice. The starchy seed of a semi-aquatic plant. There are three types. There's long, which is firm, fluffy, separate kernels. There's medium. Taste and texture fall somewhere between long and short rice. And then finally, we have short grain rice, tender and sticky when cooked. Processing rice. Brown rice or whole rice. White rice becomes pearled and polished. Converted rice is parboiled to remove the starch. Instant rice is fully cooked and flash frozen. Cracked wheat and other grains. These include bulgur, couscous, barley, buckwheat or kasha, millet, oats, and quinoa. Purchasing and storing grains. Purchase grains that are fresh and plump and have a bright, even color. Store grains in airtight containers in a dark, cool, dry place. Pasta. Made from an unleavened dough of wheat flour mixed with a liquid. The liquid is usually egg and or water. Dough can be extruded to make shapes or cut into ribbons to form noodle shapes. Identifying pasta. Italian-style pasta is fresh and dried. Asian-style are wheat noodles, rice noodles, bean starch noodles, or buckwheat noodles. Dumpling pasta is plain or drop and filled. Purchasing and storing pasta. Pasta is sold by weight, fresh or dried. Dried pasta can be stored in a cool, dry place for several months. Fresh pasta can be stored under refrigeration for just a few days. We have now reached the end of Lesson 15. Salads and dressings. After studying this unit, you will be able to identify a variety of salad greens, prepare a variety of salad dressings, prepare a variety of salads, and present salads attractively. Salad greens are not necessarily green. Some are red, yellow, white, and brown. Let's talk a bit about these greens. They include, for lettuce, Boston, iceberg, leaf, romaine, baby lettuce, and microgreens. Chicories include Belgian endive, curly endive, escarole, and radicchio. Other salad greens include arugula, dandelion, mache, sorrel, spinach, sprouts, watercress, edible flowers, and fresh herbs. Purchasing. Head lettuce is generally packed in cases of 24 heads. Salad greens are simply washed and eaten. If possible, make your purchases of salad greens daily. Many types are available pre-cut and pre-washed. Let's consider storage. Some are hardier and can be kept for a week. Other items are more delicate and need to be consumed in a few days. You must obviously monitor this. Store in the original protective cartons. Store at temperatures between 34 and 38 degrees Fahrenheit. Do not store close to apples and tomatoes, and do not wash until needed. This brings us to salad dressings. Vinaigrette dressing is also known as basic French dressing. The standard ratio is 3 parts oil to 1 part vinegar. This ratio may be adjusted depending on the types of oils and vinegars used. Remember, different types and combinations of oils and vinegars can create many flavor variations. Please experiment. Substituting the vinegar with other acid ingredients can add to flavor combinations as well. Other flavoring agents such as herbs, spices, garlic, or sugar can be added to enhance the flavor. Continuing our consideration of salad dressings. Mayonnaise. It's an emulsified cold sauce. It's used in many dressing recipes, usually bought commercially prepared. Special oils and other flavoring agents can be added to enhance and change the flavor. When making mayonnaise, care must be taken because it is a potentially hazardous food. Take a moment to look at the chart below. What we see here is a table which shows us which dressings are most appropriate with which greens. For instance, vinaigrette dressing made with vegetable oil and red wine vinegar would be appropriate to use any greens: iceberg, romaine, leaf lettuce, butterhead lettuce, escarole, curly endive, and you can just read this now, and you can definitely get ideas what is best to match with what. Tossed green salads. The informal style: place greens, garnishes, and dressing into a bowl and toss to combine. Garnishes can include vegetables, fruits, nuts, cheese. Composed green salads. Your base will usually be a layer of salad greens. The body will be the main ingredient. Of course, the garnish, added to the salad for color, texture, and/or flavor. And dressing should complement rather than mask the other flavors in the salad. Bound salads are a wide variety of salads created by combining cooked meats, poultry, fish, shellfish, potatoes, pasta, grains, and/or legumes with a dressing and garnishes. Vegetable salads are created from cooked or raw vegetables. They can be served on buffets, as an appetizer, or as a salad course. Must successfully combine color, texture, and flavor. Most are made from marinating vegetables. Finally, we have fruit salads. These are a refreshing addition to most buffets. They can be served as the first course of a lunch or dinner. Should be prepared close to service time, and dressings are usually sweet. Liqueurs can be used as dressings. We have now reached the end of Lesson 9. Lesson 17, Fruits. After studying this unit, you will be able to classify a variety of fruits, explain how fruits are preserved, prepare fruits for cooking or service, apply various cooking methods to fruits. Identifying fruits. Fruits are divided into 8 categories: berries, citrus, exotics, grapes, melons, pomes, stone fruits, and finally, tropical. Let's talk about berries. This is a small, juicy fruit. Berries grow on vines and bushes. They are thin-skinned with very tiny seeds. They can be eaten plain, or they can be cooked or added into many other items. They make fine jams and compotes. Let's talk about citrus. They are characterized by thick rinds with bitter white pith. Thin exterior layer of colored skin known as zest. Citrus fruits are acidic. Flesh is segmented and juicy, and flavors vary from very bitter to tart to sweet. Then we have the exotics, becoming increasingly available. Some become popular and are readily available. Others are only available through specialty purveyors. Grapes are the single largest fruit crop in the world due to the production of wine. Berries that grow in large clusters. They are classified by color as white or black. Color and most flavor is found in the skin. They are usually eaten raw. Dried grapes, as many of you already know, are called raisins. Melons. They are members of the gourd family. They're divided into two general types, sweet or dessert melons, or watermelons. All melons are almost 90% water. They're usually not cooked, and they should be allowed to ripen on the vine. Pomes. These are tree fruits, thin skin and firm flesh surrounding a central core containing small seeds called pips or carpels. Pomes include apples, pears, quince. Each type has many varieties. Stone fruit, also known as drupes, characterized by their thin skin, soft flesh, and one woody stone or pit. They are grown on shrubs or trees. They originated in China. They are grown worldwide today. They tend to be fragile and to bruise rather easily. They are excellent when dried, often used in liqueurs and brandies. Tropical fruit, native to the world's hot tropical or subtropical regions. They are readily available in the United States. All can be eaten without cooking. They go well with rich or spicy meat, fish, and poultry. Items to consider when purchasing fresh fruit. Fruit may be shipped ripe or unripe. It may be sold by count or by weight. Fresh fruit is generally packed in crates, bushels, cartons, cases, lugs, or flats. Before purchasing, please consider the size of each fruit, the grade, the quality, and the ripeness on delivery. Grading of fresh fruit. USDA voluntary grading program. It's based on size and uniformity of shape, color, and texture. And these grades are US Fancy, US Number 1, US Number 2 grade, US Number 3. Most fruits purchased for food service operations are US Fancy. Lower grade fruits are good for sauces, jams, jellies, or preserves. Preserving fruit. Irradiation. Subjected to ionizing radiation. Acidulation. Browning can be retarded by immersing cut fruit in an acidic solution. Canning. Solid pack, little or no water added. Water packed, added water or fruit juice for preserving. Syrup pack, light, medium, or heavy sugary syrup. Freezing. Many fruits are packed IQF. Drying. oldest known technique to preserve fruits. Cooked preserved fruits. These are jams, which is fruit gel made from fruit pulp and sugar; jellies, which is fruit gel made from fruit juice and sugar; marmalades, citrus jellies that also contain unpeeled slices of citrus fruits; and finally preserves, fruit gel that contains large chunks of whole fruit. We have now reached the end of the culinary course. We hope you learned a great deal.